Sharing our stories makes us stronger and brings us closer together. So, here's to the strong women. May we know them, the podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lucas. I'm a coach, a published author, and a speaker, but more so I like to create spaces for the messy parts of our stories to be celebrated and supported, because we are stronger together. Grab some tissues and get ready to laugh. I've got a few friends joining me today to share the wit and wisdom of our grandmothers. Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the May We Know Them podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lucas. We're doing something a little bit different today, but as always, have some pen and paper nearby. Anything that jumps out at you today, write it down. If it makes you smile, if it makes you giggle is a word today. You'll find out why. Write it down. If it challenges you, write it down. Perhaps there was a reason you needed to hear it today. We are recording this today on March 29th, which happens to be my grandmother's birthday. So this is a way to honor her. She is the muse for the entire, if you've been around for a while with me, like Dear Strong Woman movement that I've been embarking on for I don't even know how many years now, since 2017. I won't do math today, it's Friday. So I invited some friends to just come gab with me about their grandmothers. And I don't think this is just me. I think there's a really unique bond or spirit, energy that grandmothers bring to the people in their lives, especially their grandchildren. My goodness. And I don't know if it's because of the gap, the generations, just how different the world is and how we experience it. I don't know if it's because they get to spoil us and hand us back. I'm not sure what it is. But we're just going to talk about some of that today. For sure, there's bound to be some wisdom shared that only grandparents can share. I know there's bound to be some laughter. We're going to talk about, for all of us here today, our grandmothers are no longer with us. So at least here on earth. And I know for sure mine shows up all the damn time. So I'll share some of those ways she makes her presence known. And so with me today, I have my dear friend, Brent, and my friend, Anne. I'm going to invite you guys to share just a little bit about how often you saw your grandmother, when they passed, was it recent? Was it years ago? Just clue us in a little bit to where we're all at. I'll start by sharing my grandmother. We're coming up this October will be 10 years since she's gone, which feels like yesterday. Still, the grief still comes in waves, but perhaps more spread out. And there's actually more joyful moments. Like I said, this ornery nature of her, she likes to creep in there. But yeah, she's been gone 10 years, which is bizarre. And everyone, bring some tissues today. I just forgot and grabbed a roll of toilet paper. You need, if you're listening to this, you probably should just go watch the YouTube video. So Anne, Brent, I'll let you jump in. Just give us a little bit clue about these special ladies in your lives.
Both of my grandmothers passed probably 19-ish years ago. My mom's mom lived 2 houses away, so we saw her a lot. My dad's mom lived in Florida, but she came up here in the summer. So
up here, for those listening, is like the DC area. That's yes. All right.
So she didn't live nearby, but she spent a good bit of time in close proximity.
Mm-hmm.
So and each of them, oh my gosh, the strength that each of them had, and the word that you chose, Meghan, was ornery. I would say spirited. Yes, both of them very, very spirited.
What about you, Brent? Anything to share about your grandma?
And if you're listening, I'm already crying. So I'm an emotional one. I was really, really lucky. I had both my grandmas.
Mm-hmm.
I was just shy of 40 when my mom's mom passed away, and that was 7 or 8 years ago now. And then my grandma Yuli, my dad's mom, just passed away last January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little more fresh.
Yeah,
Fresh for sure.
and that was tough. It is tough. And I was just sharing with a friend yesterday about like being older and having your grandparents in your life so long. Like you feel so lucky, but it also makes it so hard because they were there for so much.
Mm-hmm.
So ooh, my grandma Gladys and my mom's mom, they only live like 10 miles away. And so I saw them every Sunday growing up, like church, then go to grandma's, hang out with the cousins. Grandma cooked, baked, all the stuff, and then just played on the farm and had fun. And she was very petite, like proper, always had her hair done, just like never left the house with a hair out of place kind of thing. And so definitely feel like I got like my perfectionism and type A and attention to detail, like those types of things from her, and also Grandpa Marv. They were like two peas in a pod in that way. My dad's parents actually grew up on the same farm, and so
Wow.
they lived in the original farmhouse. We lived in a house just a couple hundred feet away.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with them, and I didn't know any different. It wasn't until I went off to college, like I literally thought everyone saw their grandparents weekly and their cousins all the time. I didn't know that wasn't normal, and I was the odd one in in that. So just really, really lucky. And like even after I went to college and then moved away, I always saw her. Like she was the first person, because again, that's where when I drove home, where you'd park, so I'd walk in and see grandma, and then last thing I do before I left, walk in and say goodbye to grandma. And I'd have like, I called them grandma dates. So we'd go on, like go out to eat, or I'd bring food and just spend really good quality time together. So I had a lot of time with mine.
Yeah, yeah. See, I was the opposite. My grandmother originally lived probably an hour and 15 minutes away. And it's funny, I can't place it now, like how often we saw her. I just know how present she was in my life. Like we maybe drove up there once a month. I don't know. My mom would say, she could tell me a little bit better. And then she actually moved to our where we lived, to our town, when I was in college. I was away at college, so I still didn't get to see her as much, but it was definitely just it was just so nice to have her home. Like when I went home, knowing she was there. My grandmother, going along with this Dear Strong Woman theme, my grandmother was in the Marine Corps. And she was in the Marine Corps at a time when like there weren't a whole lot of women in the armed forces. And she definitely brought out that side of her at times to keep us in line, and she also had 6 kids who, I'm sure she had to use that with them too. All my uncles, bless them. They're hilarious. And my mom and my aunt too. We'll throw them in there. So yeah, that's like, if that gives you an idea of just the kind of person she was from there. And then she got diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012. And I think it was just much worse than any of us were prepared for. I remember getting the call from my mom that the doctor said they didn't think she was going to make it through the night. And I remember driving home from Wilmington, Delaware, which is just south of Philadelphia, for anyone who doesn't know where Delaware is, which is a lot of people, driving back to Pittsburgh. And getting to her probably at the point where it may have been like one of her last lucid moments. Like she saw me and I know she knew it was me. And I don't know if after that she was still with it. But I also know she heard the doctor say that he didn't think she was going to make it through the night. And she said, "The hell I ain't," and lived another 11 days. So that's who she is, stubborn to the core. Ain't no one gonna tell her what she's doing when. Just so her. And I love that example of how, like, even in our final moments, the core of who we are can really shine through. And I'm glad I brought toilet paper to wipe my tears because they're coming. It's just such a really beautiful, beautiful thing. I'd love to hear from you all, like on that notion, just like maybe a time, and it doesn't have to be a hard moment. I just mentioned breast cancer and dying, but like just a time where you really saw like the spirit of your grandmother's really come through. What memories creep up for you?
Both of my grandmothers were 92 when they died. So I kind of look at that and I'm like, okay, we're coming from a really like strong stock here. So I'm hoping that I can carry that through.
Yeah.
But my dad's mom, I would refer to her as my ageless grandma. When disco was like, all the rage, my grandmother was out dancing. She loved to dance. She loved to be active, always up for anything. And like a lot of the challenges that that I'm dealing with, like within my family, my mom always says, remember, Grandma Elsie just said, we're off on another adventure. And that was like her outlook. And she had bladder cancer and then colon cancer, and she beat it came back, she beat it came back. Her mind, etc., was with us the entire time. It was her body that failed, and yet she kept that positivity. It was always there. When she got sick, my parents went down to Florida and brought her up to the DC area. She lived with my parents. And there had been a falling out between one of my siblings and my parents. At some point in those last weeks, my mom and my grandma used to have this late night heart-to-heart talks. And my grandma asked my mom to open up her heart to my sibling and basically let he and his family back in, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And look at that as like that was like, if you want to say like a dying wish, that was, that came out of one of those late night conversations between my mom and my grandma. I credit my grandma for opening my mom's heart and arms a little to allow my brother and his family back in. And now, the arms are fully extended. Everything is hunky-dory, but for a good chunk of time, there was not a relationship there. So because of my grandma's intervention there, that like brought our family back together. The funny piece about her was that she outlived 4 husbands. At her funeral, when the rabbi rattled off her names, and I couldn't help but like laugh out loud. Like, you go, Grandma. She never got divorced. They just didn't live. So she outlived 4 husbands. And at that point in the funeral, when he said, her first name and then the whole series of last names, I'm just thinking, yep, that's my grandma.
Well, it's a testament to like, okay, now we're on to another adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, what a blessing.
And
oh my goodness.
one thing that I could relate to with Brent was my mom's mom. When Brent, you said something about grandma dates. That grandma made a point. She called it was equal time, and whatever it was equal time. It could be just you and grandma's equal time, or it could be like you and a couple of the cousins and grandma, and we got to pick whatever it was that we did. She went along with whatever also. I remember my sister-in-law and I did jazzercise with grandma, and every time the song Ain't Nothing Gonna Break My Stride comes on, like if I'm listening to like mixed music or whatever, that comes on and it takes me straight back to jazzercise with grandma and my sister-in-law. I guess I could say both of them were like Energizer bunnies. They just kept on going. I got the necklace for the one, but I wear 2 pairs of stud earrings. One of them is from my dad's mom and one of them is from my mom's mom. So, I wear them,
Keep them close.
Carrying these 2 women with me like all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the little ways we honor, those who are no longer with us, especially grandparents. And like for anyone listening, I'd love to hear how you honor your loved one. Drop a comment. Just like I just feel like my heart just got a hug hearing that. Brent, anything you want to share just about the essence
Yeah.
of, go ahead.
Yeah. I was thinking about, my grandma Gladys. I'm the first grandkid, and there's just something special about that
Oh, me
connection.
too. Yeah.
Like you're the favorite. Sorry to my other cousins.
You're just telling them what
And,
they know.
right. And so there's always that special connection, and she's 100% Scandinavian, Swedish, like. And I remember when I left Minnesota, everyone's like, "Oh, you don't like you have that accent." Like, we don't have an accent. We don't sound like Fargo. Like, this is the '90s, right? When I went to college. And then the longer I was away, I was like, "Oh my goodness, my grandma sounds like Fargo." Like, she had that like Swedish, "Oh yeah, sure, you betcha," like, and just loved it. And she always said, like, had these little just quips about her. Like, she would say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," just little things. But she made things, and like when I was coming home, she would make it because I was coming home. So like she had this like Swedish rice with a like a baked meringue on top. And it's not dessert, it's like part of your meal.
Love that.
She would also make this dessert called graham cracker fluff, and I just loved it. And then at Christmas, she always made chicken and wild rice soup. So like those things are just like grandma. And so when I make them, it just reminds me. And she made these S cookies too. They're just like little spritz cookies, and she shaped them like an S, but they were like so special. And I attempted them this past holiday. They didn't look like grandma's, but they tasted, so that was good. But and going back to like being the favorite, when she passed away, and she'd moved off the farm to an apartment and then downsized again, maybe I think within the last couple months before she passed away. And so when we were cleaning out her space, she had this little photo album of me from when I was born, and she kept it with her that whole time. So just super special. Grandma Yuli, kind of in when you're talking about your grandma, Megan, it just my she was feisty, like no whole like she said what she thought. Like her and her sisters were all just like that, just very like direct to the point, super loving, super caring. Um, I had really never thought about this, but when she passed away, my oldest cousin, Tara, she's the only girl out of the four of us grandkids. And she was saying how she grew up seeing her grandma work and be successful and do all this stuff. And so she never thought women couldn't do anything, like women could do it all because she saw grandma do it. And like for me, that never, like it just never stood out. Like grandma just worked, and but so did my mom, and so did my aunt, like it just wasn't that thing that stood out to me until like I heard her explain that, and it really made me think back to like she worked for the phone company. She was like one of those operators, like party line plugging people in, and she moved her way up and like had all these sales awards. Like when she passed away, we found all these like jewelry, like real diamonds from like winning top sales people and all that. So she had a super successful career. She was at a lead foot, so I definitely get my like slightly aggressive driving from her. Lived on gravel roads, so the joke was she didn't want dust to get on her vehicle, so she tried to outdrive it. Yeah,
I love that.
I think all the grandkids got that gene from her. But the one thing that really stands out for me with my grandma, my grandpa had a super super rare disease. I think it's called supranuclear palsy, if I'm remembering correctly, and it just gradually took his body away from him. So he would lose balance, and then like mobility, so wheelchair, and then just gradually over 20 some years, everything, the final was that you can't swallow, you know. And she took care of him for like years on the farm. And I remember watching her like using a lift and like lifting him in and out of bed, and just all that stuff, all that caretaking. And then when he did have to be in the nursing home, his last years, she's in there every afternoon, like just that genuine love.
And almost like just matter of, this is what we do.
Oh my gosh. and they were, like they were young. They were married. I think they hit 70 years. I'm trying to remember where they're. No, I think they were just shy of 70 years. But be together that long and like the ups and downs and just like, but when I think of her and the caretaking and that just love, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think there's a resilience. Like I'm picking up on a resilience theme here, common thread and what everyone has shared this far. And I think, we mentioned some quips. So I have so many that just popped into my head, but on the line of resilience, I remember in my 20s just going through like dating. Ugh, and always thinking, this is it, this is the one, and then like get dumped. And I would call my mom, and if she wouldn't answer, I'd call my grandma. I'd usually call both of them. My grandma had a way, like she would just like I'd call her crying, She's like, girl, there's a holiday coming up. He just didn't want to get you a gift. You're fine. You're fine. And like end of conversation. Like just like, that was like that's the resilience I'm talking about. Just like she got me grounded in like 3 seconds. Like, honey, this isn't about you. There's so many podcasts and things today about like doing the work and all the things and attachment styles. And like way back then, she's like, hey, honey, it ain't about you. When you come over. Like it was just like that was it. I want to just because it's on my mind, like I'd love to shift into like some of the unique ways perhaps the spirit of our grandmothers continues to show up. And I'll share, since I just mentioned like dating in my 20s. There was one time I was going out on a blind date. Like it had been a little bit after a kind of a blindsided breakup that I didn't see coming, and like starting over again. I'm like, oh, this shit. Like I don't want to do this. I'm tired. And I remember talking to her, like just having an out loud conversation with her, saying, Cleo, if this person is going to waste my time, if this is going to be butterflies and rainbows only to end in like, I didn't see that coming in 3 months, just tell me now. Just send me a sign. And we're Pittsburgh people. And my grandmother like won fantasy football a lot. Like she's a big football sports person. We take it very personally. And there was one time in college where I dated a Cowboys fan. And then there was one time, like, you're laughing so hard. There was maybe a few years later, I ended up dating another Cowboys fan. My grandmother just shook her head at me. I went out on this blind date. I had just told her, give me a sign. And, within like the first couple minutes of talking, this person I was with mentioned that he was a Cowboys fan. And I remember like almost spitting out my drink. Like, that's what I get. I asked for a sign and she gave me a big neon sign, like turn around and go the other way. Those are like, that's an example of some of the little ways like she continues to be in my space. Sometimes when I ask her, like that time I asked her. Other times, I've associated hummingbirds with her quite a bit. The house that I associate with her growing up, there were always hummingbirds around. And, talk about like having a piece of something of theirs with you. I used to have a bracelet that said for Cleo, and it was a breast cancer ribbon and had a little hummingbird on it. And then right before she passed, about a month before she passed, I ended up getting a hummingbird tattoo. Just because, again, I was hurting and I wanted to feel a little bit of pain. So like I always have that with me. And I ended up giving the bracelet to my brother. I don't know if he still wears it. So like anytime I see a hummingbird, it always seems to be out of nowhere. Like I haven't seen hummingbirds in years or months or something. And suddenly I see one. I'm like, where the hell did this come from? And it's usually right at the moment where I need it. And it's just a swoop in, say hello, and swoop back out. That's how she is. Like, I'm here. Don't you forget about me.
Both of my grandmothers passed away between the time that my kids were born, and my younger one is named for both of my grandmothers. I mean, Megan, my younger one, we have, quite the medical odyssey, and the strength and the resilience of my grandma lives on through my younger one. You name a baby after someone who has passed. And in this case, there was no question. When you say, may we know them, the strength, the resilience, the fight, even if something knocks you down, you get right back up. That's the spirit that my younger child has. And I look at it as, it's my grandmother's coming through in that way.
Oh, beautiful. I think for you, Brent?
I think, and Megan and I were talking before we hit record, but just, I'm a big, the universe gives you what you need when you need it. And, I do think they play a role in that in some ways. But I think, like when I bake or cook certain things, like I definitely feel a connection to my grandma Gladys. And even like, I think like a lot of us during or right after COVID, it happened, plants became a thing. And so I got all these plants, and she was very good in the garden and flowers and stuff. And so I feel a connection to Grandma Gladys through that. And I think Grandma Yuli, it's the hard work. It's the like just grit and determination and love. Not giving up. Yeah.
I see a lot of my grandmother through my son. He's a ornery little, the way he laughs when somebody says no is just, oh, he's trouble. And my grandmother had a giggle. Man, did she have a giggle. She kept your toes in line. She knew how to make a bed so that, she taught her kids how to do so a quarter would bounce off of it. Like, she didn't mess around, and yet she messed around. So she used to work in a school. So we had fun conversations when I was a teacher. She told me things she would do to the kids who were acting up in my class. I'm like, Grandma, I can't repeat that. I get in trouble. Anyway, she worked in a school, and the number of teachers that came to her funeral and just told stories about her, and the number of those stories that were pranks that she pulled on them, she was trouble. But I see it in Des, in how smart he is. Trouble in a good way. Like he knows what he's doing, when he doesn't follow a direction or just pushes the boundary a little bit extra. And the smile that comes across his face and the laugh that fills the air is 100% her spirit. And like, I can feel her smile because she loved family. Like, she really, oh my God, she loved family. There was nothing that meant more to her. Yeah, I see it every day in this little spunky kid. It's just so cool.
Megan, I had to,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, hearing you talk about all that, I don't have kids, but my brother has 4 kids, and the first 3 were boys, and then the last one's our little girl that everybody wanted, and just this precious little angel, right? And when COVID happened, I was living in Atlanta, and I decided to move home and be with my family because I just didn't want to not be home if something were to happen. And so I got to spend a year, my niece's first year of life, and then one of my grandma's last, with them. And I just feel really blessed and fortunate to do that. And I remember when my niece was born, and she hadn't met grandma yet, and Cammie was really finicky as a baby, like cried, and grandma wanted to come down to meet her and hold her, and we're like, oh my God, she's gonna freak out. Like, this isn't gonna work, right? And grandma held her, and Cammie just was peaceful and like just looked up at her, and they had this connection. And like, there's other moments like that where they just have this like peaceful connection. But then I see
each other in themselves or something. Yeah.
Yes. But then when I see my niece and her feistiness and the way she is, like, I joke, I'm like, did I whisper too many like be a strong independent woman things in your ear your first year of life? And now I'm thinking that's actually Grandma Yuli showing up.
Yeah.
Like, just they had such a beautiful connection, and like, she is strong, independent, and strong-willed, and voices everything. And my brother doesn't like it probably, but like, it just clicked for me. Like, there's that special connection with Grandma Yuli
Yeah.
showing up.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. If you're listening to this podcast, go watch the video, because the smiles that are happening today, you don't have to like be on the same page with anything we're saying, and you will smile just seeing the joy that's coming out of this conversation today. I want to wrap on a very important note that kind of we've been dropping in here a little bit, which is like food. um, there's been a couple of moments where I've wanted to go off on a tangent about like the different things my grandmother would make and whatnot. And I feel like we would be doing everyone a disservice if we don't mention just one or two things that were staples on the table or on the counter or anytime we came home that maybe were just like, a sign of the times. Like maybe other people be like, oh yeah, my grandma made that too. Just for some nostalgia, because I think we all love that. So for Thanksgiving for us, my grandmother always made kluski noodles, egg noodles. I know people listening are probably like, I have no idea what it is. But that was our gravy for everything. So like we'd fill up a plate. I'm like imagining my uncles filling up a big plate of potatoes and ham and turkey and stuffing and all that. And then you would take a ladle of these noodles, which were baked in like the broth, and whatnot, and just dump it over the entire plate. Like if you could see these pictures of our meals, people are probably like, that looks a mess, but it's just imagine a Thanksgiving plate with just a bunch of noodles all over it. And that was our thing. And there was one year, my mom, after my grandmother passed, she got us all Kluski noodles like for Christmas. And it was just like, oh, grandma. So that was a big thing. I always make my grandmother's pumpkin pies every year for Thanksgiving. Her trick, I'll share the recipe with anybody who wants it, just send me a message, was to double the amount of eggs. So there's your trick from grandma. It makes the pie a little more custardy. Either of you have something special you want to share so we can go all eat our feelings after this?
When my parents were clearing out my everything from my dad's mom's apartment, they came across it was an entire stack of handwritten recipes, and she had very, very distinctive handwriting.
Gosh, don't all
I was going to say like there's like a
that
Europeanness, like a Europeanness to it.
Yeah.
But my dad took this whole set of recipes and made copies for each of the grandchildren. So I have the cookbook handwritten, and yes, I think it was probably a generational thing also. Mm-hmm. But it's not just her recipes, it's her handwritten recipes that makes them ultra special, and at the same time a little bit on the illegible side, and you're like, what do you think this should have been? We'll take our best guess.
Yeah.
Can't mess it up too badly.
I have a couple of those too. I'm like, I don't know what you mean here. Let's take an adventure, right? Going back to the theme.
Yes, exactly. But my other grandma, I don't remember so much like food items, but she always made sure that I think it's a generational thing also. There was always stewed fruit on the table. So it was like the apricots, prunes, raisins, and we always looked at it and went, okay, that's for you. That's for you, Grandma. Grandma made sure that it was going to be there. None of the kids ever touched it, but it was always there.
And yet you remember it. Yeah, for sure.
Very clearly, yes.
I know for my grandma Gladys already mentioned like the rice she made with the meringue, like that's her. It's an art to do meringue like that. Like that is a true talent. It's not easy. And even when I bake or like do certain things, I'm like, my grandma was like little, and like to hand whisk and do some of that stuff. I'm like, get some strong arms. And then the S cookies, like that just, like you go over and like immediately go for the freezer or the thing and like grab them, and just so good. My grandma Yuli, for me, she had these like 3 containers of cookies on the counter. And like I said, I grew up on the farm. So like go into school. Before school, I'd always get bubble gum out of a certain drawer. And then after school, grab a cookie. And I loved molasses cookies, which are, I guess, a ginger snap, but we call them molasses. And then I thought, as a kid, you're super cool when you're having like coffee with the adults and they would give you like a little cup of coffee to dunk your, cookies in. But the funny thing, food about my grandma, and this is like a whole family thing, she made the best potato salad. So like summer picnics, like just amazing. We would have it as we got older. My cousin Jared would request it for like if we were together for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Like it didn't matter what time of year, it had to be, grandma's potato salad there. And if she got older, he really wanted to like learn how to make it. And so of course she wrote it down and he made it. He's like, this does not taste like grandma's potato salad. So he has literally videotaped her multiple times trying to capture the creation of this potato salad. And every time you like make it the day before, and then, the lunch was the next day, we'd come over and she's like, oh yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and tasted it and didn't have enough of this. So I threw more of it. And he's like, no, you can't do that. I have it all on tape. I recorded it. You can't do that. That ruined, And so I don't know where we landed in capturing, but I think, the essence of grandma shows up everywhere. And maybe one day we'll perfect the potato salad, but it's a funny memory trying to capture it. And I think my grandma had fun, like kind of dodging some, like just being playful with us getting the recipe too,
Yeah.
So that was a fun memory the last few years too.
Yeah. Oh man. She'd hate me if I didn't mention my grandmother made really excellent bread pudding. And one of the ways I honor her today is anytime I'm out to eat, if there's bread pudding on the menu, it does not matter if I am stuffed to the brim, I will order it in the name of research to see if it's better than her. It never is, but I'm committed to the research and I will not veer off course and it's the way that I honor her. Oh man, I save my bread ends in a bag. And then when I have enough, I make some. The last time I made it, I forgot to put eggs in and I called my mom and I said, you're not going to believe this. And so that's just another way Cleo showed up just to laugh at me. And I mentioned, I'm ending on food kind of as a lighter note, but also like I have this vision, I'm just going to put it out there of actually creating a cookbook where I call for recipes for people to submit something like maybe this potato salad recipe or something that honors a strong woman in their life. As just another way of like, may we know them. And so much of how we get to know people is through food. And so, just planting that seed for anyone listening.
Book number 2. I love it.
Something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Participate in this conversation. I feel so light and like just full of, my heart is full. Just these kinds of stories, like through the tears and the smiles, like simultaneously are just so beautiful. And like, I know, I almost made it through. Like, I know this is her. She's doing this to me. I know my grandmother's like up there, like just like smiling in like a very like proud, happy, but also like I told you so kind of way. Like I left an impact. I knew I would, just a little bit of spiciness. And anytime I hear somebody like whose grandmother who's no longer here, I'm like, my grandma's up there showing them the ropes. Don't you worry about it. She is pulling them into the party, saying, "Come on, dance with me." Like probably like similar, like Anne, you said your one grandmother was a dancer. Like just like such a celebration of life and legacy. And I was very present to all of that today. So thank you for leaning in and sharing and going down memory lane and being willing to cry along the way. And I love it. I appreciate it so much. For anyone listening, if something stood out to you today, please put it in a comment. If there's, if you've got a story that you just feel like you're bursting at the seams that you need to share in honor of a grandmother in your life, here or not anymore, please do so, because if you don't, they'll let you know you should have, I'm sure. And this was a really fun little bit of a different episode. I appreciate you all. And please stay tuned for another episode.